than who else or who need, as Twellman brought up last night. If Minnesota wants to make the playoffs, Darwin Quintero has to be the best player.
I don't think so.
I don't
do you
think that's
agree with
accurate.
that?
I don't. I think Darwin needs to find his place in the team because the team is talented enough. Maybe not to his level. I think he's more talented than most of the team. But it's one of those situations where the team is talented enough to support him and allow him to pull back a bit.
That's right. I mean, how many games last year did we sit here and talk about, it was Darwin, it was Darwin, it was Darwin. It was a broken record.
He won a bunch of games for us.
He did, and he was a single reason why he won games. We would just it was like a broken record if the Minnesota United had won. It was, Darwin Quintero. Thank you, Darwin. Thank you, Darwin. And he was streaky. I mean, I think he brought it up. I think Taylor also brought up the fact that I think he's played now 48 games with Minnesota, and he hasn't scored in 30 of them.
That's right.
And it sounds worse than it is, but I think it just draws to the point that he is streaky. He has been. He's been streaky this year. He's hopefully with the U.S. Open Cup and this match against Cincinnati, he's on the right side of that. But who knows? He could disappear on Wednesday against San Jose. We don't know. But
so I'd like to side note. All of a sudden, my computer flashed me a email message, and I was like, "That doesn't make sense because my computer is connected to the Wi-Fi."
Yeah.
There are a bunch of Wi-Fis available right now.
Oh,
except our house.
What?
So that's interesting.
That's great.
However, I'm attached to some Wi-Fi that would maybe be ours.
I can say this, though. I'm looking at my iPad here, which is not Wi-Fi enabled, and I do not see any available Wi-Fi networks.
It's intriguing.
Thanks
there
to
are
Tony and his
multiple
phone
available
for letting me keep
to
going
me,
here.
but none of them are my neighbors. So
that's weird.
Yeah.
Anyways, so we're talking. Let's continue on the
Yes.
the mid-season talk, and I think we brought this up a couple times last season, I should say. As far as what you need to make the playoffs, that could be different in this year. We touched on it earlier in the podcast, how the West, especially the West, I guess you could make a case for all of MLS, but especially the West is very bunched up.
Very.
As we sit through 17 games played, we're sitting at 1.41 points per game.
Yeah.
Well, that magic number is that we brought up last year. Is that about 1.5 that you'd expect to need to make the playoffs? That might come down a little bit, given the fact that 7 teams are going to make the playoffs this year as opposed to 6 in previous years.
That's right. And you have Houston, who's at 1.5, and they're in 7th.
They have a game in hand. They've played 16. So at one point, Houston was the earlier in the season they were the points per games leader. But clearly that's the LA's LAFC and LA Galaxy, and that brings me to another point that was brought up yesterday that we should also bring up. Not sure if I agree or not, but the fact was brought up that the next 10 games for the United, including last night's game, so let's say the next 9 games is an important stretch, or at least that's what... I mean, of course, any game is important, but it's incredibly important only because I think 6 of the next 9 are at home at Allianz.
Yep.
And then they finish with a rather daunting stretch of, I think, 6 games after that, including... just off the top of my head, I can tell you that they play LAFC twice in the month of September, I believe.
Yeah.
So and that's including a couple tough games on the road, one of those being LAFC. So, and I think Twellman brought up the point where, okay, out of these 10 games, including yesterday, they need 20 points to make the playoffs. That sounds like a lot. That's 2 points per game over the next 10.
I don't think that's accurate because of the way it's bunched up, though.
Is it realistic, though? If 6 of those 10, including yesterday, were at home, is that realistic? I guess you'd have to say, yes, it's realistic.
I mean, I think it's realistic if you consider... If we make it past San Jose on Wednesday, you're 3 right there.
Mm-hmm. Which, I'm glad you brought that up, because, as we sit here mid-season talking about that, San Jose, a team who the United beat... Rather, what was the scoreline on that game?
Oh, I don't remember.
In San Jose,
that was 3-2, right?
3-2. Okay, but that being said, I think the United or Minnesota United caught them at a good time because they were not at their top form. But here they are. They sit above Minnesota in the standings by a point. They're set at 25 points now.
But I think
so. How big is that game on Wednesday?
It's a huge game. But I think going back to Taylor's comment about 20 points, it's such a dogfight in the lower area of the playoffs for the West that 20 points is going to get you up. But there's so many other teams that'll be fighting too. I think even like 14 points would be a good thing to have.
Yeah, I mean, you look at it, it's just so interesting. The fact that the last two teams in the West, as we sit, are Sporting KC and Portland.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, are they going to make late season runs like we've seen from, say, the Seattles of the world last year?
I don't think so. I mean, I think Portland would be most suited to potentially do that.
I think they're going to have a lot of games at home as well because I think their first 6 weeks for them, I think
it was more than that.
Yeah, it might have been
8
because their stadium was under renovation or construction.
But I think Sporting, they're just a disaster. They've had so many injuries, and they've just kind of fallen off. I don't think I see them making a move.
And do you
Colorado could maybe?
I was going to say they're next up on the list, sitting in 10th, but they have come on. They haven't lost a game in at least their last 5. But bottom line is they beat the Loons.
Yep.
In Colorado, and since then, and that was right in the middle of their, I think they had won 3 in a row at that time, or they at least hadn't lost in 3 matches leading up to the United match, and so are they pretenders though? It sounds like you're saying they are, but
I don't think they're that good.
Okay, I'm gonna give you the teams behind Minnesota United in the standings. You tell me who you're most worried about. It would be Houston. Technically, they're level point-wise. But Houston, Real Salt Lake, Vancouver, Colorado, Sporting Kansas City, and Portland. Who are you most worried about? Is it Houston? Is that too easy?
I mean, I think it's Houston and Real Salt Lake because we haven't played Real Salt Lake at all.
Right.
Yeah.
So you've got 6 points up. And they're not... It's not like they're worse than us. They're 23 points.
Yeah.
So I think it's them. And then Houston, we still have a game with them.
Do they play? Does Houston play a lot of home games? Does Houston play a lot of home games the rest of the season, though?
Not necessarily.
That's the question.
Houston 6-0-3 at home and 1-6 on the road.
Exactly. So Houston play a bunch of home,
and we play Houston at home or at Houston.
At Houston.
Yeah.
But that's, I think it's like mid-September.
Yeah. So I don't know. So you might be able to talk me into our Minnesota United. Could they do better than the 6th spot where they currently sit? Yeah, I mean, I guess the answer is yes, but can you sit here and tell me that you got pacing the West is LAFC with 37 points, and then you got LA Galaxy and Seattle. I can't see them cracking that group.
No.
Can you?
I think they can.
You could.
I don't think Seattle's, that strong. I think they're good. But if Minnesota plays cohesively like they have the last few games, U.S. Open and League, even Philly, as long as they eliminate those individual errors, or even just cut them down.
It's not,
and they made it. I think they made the point yesterday of saying, I mean, if Angelo Rodriguez and Darwin Quintero start playing with the form that they have been, and they start playing together, and they find each other. And that offensive potency of Minnesota could be significant. And if you see, the sky, if we get back to when Calvo was released and the sky is falling and our back line is struggling, even though, as I sit here and say that, overall, the problem hasn't been defense.
No.
They haven't, Minnesota United have not scored a lot of goals. But they haven't given up many either.
Right.
And I think it's actually a little bit exciting seeing, likes of Chase Gasper and Hassani Dotson starting, and that could, and who knows what they're going to do in the window. I think that opens up.
Right. And there are 2 that they're in advanced talks with. In fact, it was Andy Greeter who reported that Heath basically said, look, we can't say anything because even if they sign, we have to work through visa issues, all that stuff. So to me, when a manager says something like that, I think the contracts are probably, I think they're set. I think we're going to see whoever those 2 people And also, considering their visa issues, that means they're international. So I think there's a situation where we're clearly going to do something in the window, whether that's one or two players. Honestly, I don't think we need more than one. I mean, if we absolutely had to,
No.
I think we need somebody that can help in the midfield in attack.
Okay, I was just going to ask you that. I mean, because where would you plug if in a perfect world? Let's not worry about money. We're not the front office. If as a fan, where would you want to see a player?
I mean,
I think you just answered that question.
Yeah, I would want to see a 10 where
what about
Molino and Darwin can play at their actual positions on the wing?
You just beat me to it, and I don't want to sound like a broken record for those that watched the game yesterday, but we've got a player potentially in Molino that's coming back to full health. You know, after his injury.
I think he's looked solid ever since he came back.
Yeah.
And he's looked better in the last couple sub roles. So I just really think I get Adrian Heath wants to play Darwin or Molino at the 10 spot. That's not their position. They're wingers. Get them out on the wings and bring in a really good 10.
So, I mean,
that role.
Do you think, David, for Minnesota to improve on where they are now and to get into that, say, potentially top 4 spot like you think is realistic, do you think that they need to change their overall, say, formation or style of play to do that?
I don't think so.
They don't need to change?
You know, they last night they had less than 40% possession and they won 7-1.
Yeah.
I mean, that is exactly how you want a counterattacking team to play. Now, again, it was FCC, but still, that's how you want a counterattacking team to play. So maybe it's not going to be 7-1, right? Maybe it's going to be 3-2 or 3-1. That's what you want. I mean, you're not going to get FCCs every game. You've got Montreal, who's arguably level better than us. You've got RSL, who's basically points wise the same as us. You've got Vancouver, who should be relatively easy at home. Portland at home. Dallas on the road. Dallas is probably on the road our biggest challenge up through September. If this team can play the way they did last night against every opponent, it's not going to be 7-1. It's not going to be 4-1. But that's how you want Adrian Heath's system to work.
Yeah.
And so if they can bring in this window a number 10 and get Darwin, get Molino, keep Ibarra out on the wing, maybe even bring Ibarra in as a left back.
Yeah.
If they can get that one attacking midfielder that they've never ever had,
but
I think third, fourth easily is expected.
Okay,
but we'll go.
So I think we'll roll on to you, Tony. But so basically, we've set the bar. Then, so that's, I mean, realistically, third or fourth. That could be achievable based on the points and where they are now. Supporters Cup Shield. Let's not get ahead. I mean, LAFC sitting there with 37. But where's the bottom? Because as we sit, I think it was Jeff Reuter that pointed to a website or they're bringing up the statistics of the Minnesota United making the playoffs, and I think it sat at 48% before the Cincinnati game. So if you're telling me that they can get to third, there is a realistic chance, given the West, that they could fall out of the playoff.
I mean, it is, because as Tony brought up, it's
a dogfight,
incredibly packed,
and that was my concern, was that I don't know if you can go further up with all the battles you're going to have to do in that bottom area. You're going to have all these teams battling for a couple spots.
Right.
To get in the third, you're going to have one of those top 3 guys drop off substantially and get in that mix, right?
I don't know that I'd say substantially, but
they're going to have to drop at some point.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at, I'm looking at the standings right now. You've got Real Salt Lake as a -4 differential. Yeah. They're in 8th. They've given up 28 goals. Colorado's still at 36 goals. Sporting's at 29 goals. I don't think Vancouver's at 25. Even Houston's now even at 22. But you even look